What the Tech is sponsored by Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com and get 10% off your entire purchase.
What the Tech?
Welcome everybody to What the Tech. I am Andrew Zarian. I'm wearing a striped shirt today. I can't even speak. And the people are making fun of me and they're asking me to take my shirt off. So maybe by the end of the show I'll be shirtless. I'm here with the man that has invented the color Thurrott blue, Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul? And I have no audio from Paul. That's not good.
Oh, my fault.
There we go.
Sorry, I had muted myself so I could yell an instruction to my daughter.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm well. What I said previously was that I believe the color is actually called navy blue, but I'm willing to take credit for it.
I don't know. To me, it's Thurrott blue, and it'll always be Thurrott blue. I actually painted the studio after you, and some people say Microsoft blue, but I call it Thurrott blue.
Microsoft blue.
Yeah, it's Thurrott blue.
Could be.
A very eventful week for us here. We're still getting in the mode of working in the new studio, and we're still experiencing a lot of issues. So we're starting to show a couple minutes late every week for every show almost on the network. We have like 10 shows, and every one of them are getting started a little late. So bear with us, be patient, because eventually we'll get it. It's very embarrassing, actually. So I do want to start off by talking about something. Paul and I were discussing off the air. We were discussing the whole MegaUpload debacle, and here's where I stand on this. And I don't know if Paul you agree with me on this. I don't think MegaUpload is the issue. I think they were just a target to make an example out of because the guy is a pompous ass.
I completely agree with that. I don't think that they were doing anything particularly unique, in this world. And I think that what has happened to them is going to give anyone who runs such a company, and by such a company I basically mean any online storage service, essentially, pause, because that's scary what happened to those guys.
Well, the fact that they're in another country and they got shut down by the U.S. government. I mean that's.
Yeah, you thought we still didn't have it, but
we still got it. They were shut down on the 23rd. Oh no, as of the 23rd. So this is from last week. This is a list of services that have stopped or limited their service. So you have File Server, you have Video BB, File Post, Upload.to. File Jungle. I mean, the list goes on and on. ForShared, Enter Upload. So they're all slowly removing anything they've been doing.
The list that you provide here is interesting, and I just closed it like a jerk. Well, I'll have to reopen it. But it's interesting, the list that you provided earlier, which I will now find again. Those little tab close buttons are a little too easy to click.
Well, here's the thing.
You look at them. I mean, it's like, it's not Dropbox.
No,
right?
It's not Box.
Yeah. It's companies that, I think we all suspect exist for one reason and one reason only, which I think is why they're
pornography, obviously.
I was going with
oh, okay. All right.
Pirated files, but okay, yes.
No, I mean, but here's the thing. I don't know anybody, and I'll be honest, I think we had a file. I forgot the one. It's not on this list. I think it's like file something. And we were looking at an option to share folders back and forth, like stuff back and forth, files, and it never worked right for us.
I think it's a little right. So you kind of wonder then what just happened to those files. Well,
it never worked right. It was too slow for us. So obviously, it's not the best solution when you're looking for large file transfers, I guess, that are legitimate. So the only real thing that people really use this for, and sadly, it was piracy.
Yep. I think that's the only reason the internet exists, isn't it? Maybe I'm missing the point.
Piracy? Well, you know what's... By the way, I am battling a crazy echo from my headphones again, so if I'm trying to deal with it. It'll go away eventually, and that happens.
I keep thinking we get disconnected.
I know, it's one of
those
those
days. A lot of these
days.
services operate under different names too, which frankly should be a cause for alarm.
Well, it is piracy. I mean, here's the thing. Most of these sites, like RapidShare, I know RapidShare changed their business model a couple of years ago, like about a year ago, but they are still known. I mean, when you look at RapidShare and you look at MegaUpload, people don't necessarily think legitimate corporate use.
Right.
I mean, that's the truth about this thing. Again, I don't necessarily agree with the way that it was handled and the way that they were shut down. I think it was just for an example to be made out of these guys and out of MegaUpload, and I guess they were the big ones. I don't know if RapidShare is... I don't know who's the largest. Would MegaUpload be the largest one? Because I never really trusted them. Like, if somebody sent me a link and it was a MegaUpload link, I never clicked on it.
Yeah, so they're the only ones of these that you've listed that I've ever even heard of. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a tough audience or tough crowd there, but it's probably the most legit, I would say, of those, you know. But I think that's why, right? Because they are the big one. I think this is the reason this is sending shudders throughout this little industry is that apparently the eye of law enforcement here in the U.S. has finally turned its attention to this stuff. So these are so much easier targets than going after Verizon, you know, to find out what their subscribers are doing. You know, the people on the other end of this, if you think about it, I mean, we're all accessing these services somehow. Yeah. Some of us I'm sure, are smart enough to redirect stuff technologically so that it can't be tied back to them, but most people probably aren't, and you know, they're ripe for the picking, and it's easier to get them, you know, to stop this from this end than it is to go after individuals.
But I mean, obviously, this is never going to stop piracy, and this is the same argument that we've heard for years since, you know, first you had Napster, and then you had the peer-to-peer services, then BitTorrent came out, and you can't shut down BitTorrent. I mean, that's not going to happen. And this is pretty much an easy way for people that don't understand how BitTorrent works to get their pirated software. That's how I see these services.
There's a whole subculture of the internet that I'm not really a part of, and some of this stuff I don't understand. I've certainly used BitTorrent, for example, and years and years ago in the past, I had used Usenet news groups to do things like this, where you know, they have a binary packaging feature where you can, you know, they would put up whether it was a software application or whatever it was in multiple parts, and you combine them and, you know, into the single file you're trying to download and all that. And I'm sure technologically these things have their various advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah, I mean, you had the server rooms, you had the IRC rooms. I mean, this has gone on for
and it always will. There'll always be this steamy underside.
Yeah, first of all, they're never gonna battle piracy. They're never gonna be able to defeat piracy. It's funny how it has become the issue again, and this raid happened, this shutdown happened of MegaUpload while the SOPA stuff was kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
You know, and that just shows you, first of all, they don't need SOPA to do this.
Well, you know, it may simply be that
it was a coincidence.
These sites are on the web, you know, that this stuff has gotten a lot easier, that it's a little harder to police and probably a lot less lucrative to do so when you're talking about kind of borderline web internet technologies, whether it's Usenet or BitTorrent or whatever, you know. This is like right on the web. I mean, anyone can do this. You know, I think this promotes casual piracy, and I think that's...
But here's the interesting thing, okay? And there are stuff out there, like obscure shows, let's say from the 80s or 70s or 60s, that you will never be able to find on DVD, or you'll never be able to find anywhere. You know, Hulu's not carrying it, Netflix isn't carrying it. So if it's not available to you, is it that big of a deal?
Right. I mean, okay, so you're talking about something very specific.
Very specific, yeah. And I know a lot of people use it for that. I know a lot of people use these services, and you know, I know many people that do it because they can't get the show that they're looking for or whatever they're looking for on any of these services.
So, I mean, I don't mean to say I would condone that kind of downloading. I'm sure a lot of that stuff is on YouTube, for example, whatever. But Yeah, absolutely. I've run into that kind of thing. I happen to be a fan of a lot of shows that are from the UK that come to the US much more slowly. I'm 45 years old, so I'm like, and I have a job, so I can go to Amazon UK and order these DVDs, and then actually use software that is probably technically illegal in the United States
Hmm.
to rip them into a digital file that I can actually play here in the US, because those files won't play on my DVD, or those DVDs won't play on my DVD player. So I can do stuff like that, but I'm not going to do that for everything. And
Sure.
certainly I have run into the issue you're describing, but that's really just an excuse, because most of the people that are doing this just aren't going to buy it. They're pirating.
I'll
They're
be
not looking
honest
for
with
the
you.
legitimate alternative.
But in the past, I'll be honest, a lot of the music that I've learned about or I've been exposed to has come from means that is not necessarily legal. It's you find
Sure.
it on YouTube, for example. You go to YouTube and you hear the song. I mean, technically, some
No,
guy
no,
uploading a
we've,
song is not
yeah,
legal.
we've all been young.
Yeah. No,
The
no, no.
very
But
first version of Windows I ever owned, somebody gave me.
I mean, when I was a
Um,
kid, because of Napster, I was exposed to music like Led Zeppelin and things that were not playing on the radio or the stations I was listening to. So, but
yeah,
I've gone out and bought their record many times. Billy Joel, I bought his record many times. So I understand that a lot of people don't go out and buy it, but I think those are the people that would have never bought it. I think if you're going to buy something, you're going to, it's still attracting a new audience.
yep.
You're still
And
creating
anytime,
revenue.
right? And any content is going to be electronically distributed, and it means illegal and legal. And this stuff's always going to occur. Yeah. So, do you want to stop the people that are never going to pay for it anyway? I don't know. It's sort of like intellectual property protection. At some point you have to make at least a show of protecting what you own, because otherwise, in the eyes of the law, rather, you cease to own it. And maybe that's part of this. That the content owners are collectively attempting to make some big bang stoppages of piracy, simply to be involved in that act and thus be shown that they're protecting their interest. It's kind of hard to say.
It's such an archaic way of trying to battle it, right? What the government
Yeah.
is trying to do. It's a very bizarre way of kind of looking at these digital files, which are just code. It's not a physical device,
Yeah.
and they're trying to put it in the same category as actually going to a store and taking a CD or taking
Yeah.
whatever.
And ultimately it's not going to work, right?
No.
I mean, this is just something that will evolve and evolve and evolve, and that's here we go.
I don't have stats, Paul, but I'm curious. Maybe the audience knows. I wonder, since services like iTunes and Zune and Hulu and Netflix, has piracy gone down?
Yeah, they would never promote that.
I would love to know that. I would love to know if those, because it's a lot easier. I catch myself buying a song because it's 99 cents and I just hit buy.
But you have a job.
But I
See,
guess.
you got to remember, most of the people doing this are not 40-something dads like I am or whatever. They're college students, kids. They just don't. They don't have the facility. It's way too easy for me or you to buy something online, but for kids, it's just way too easy for them to steal something online.
I don't know. So what do you think they should do? Because the MegaUpload thing, again, this is not the problem. These file sharing sites, I understand to an extent. Yes, they are the issue because they're supplying it, but
Well,
they're not really supplying it. They're not going out there and saying, "Hey, look at the pirated software that we have."
I don't look at this as the beginning of the new American war on piracy. This is just, you're mad at something and you need to take it out on someone you can take it out on, so you do. I mean, this is just, remember, we're here, and I don't see this as the start of anything.
You don't think anything? I mean, you don't think that they're all going to one by one start getting shut down and raided?
No, I mean, you mentioned SOPA, right? I mean, do you think this is coincidental that this happened? Right.
No,
in the
I don't
middle
think
of
it
that?
is. I don't think it is. I think it was an example.
Right. That's what I'm saying. In other words, this is just flexing our muscles a little bit and saying, hey, don't forget, we can do this.
I mean, it's crazy to think that 11 years after the collapse of Napster, it's still the same story, the same discussion, the same battle is happening.
Yeah. I use this software to decrypt DVDs called it's called SliceOft Any DVD. It's fairly expensive now. It didn't used to be, but and I'd have to go look it up. But the company is located on some island somewhere because this is a place. Let me go look. I'll even just look it up. This is a company that, or rather, they offer a service that's technically illegal because of the DMCA in the United States. Let me see.
What was the software in the early 2000s that everybody used for the DVD ripping? That got banned. I forgot what it was. You could actually buy it.
Real Network tried to sell something. Remember, they got sued into. They got the product got sued away. Yeah. So Slysoft is located in Antigua and Barbuda because this is a place that doesn't honor those laws.
Sure.
Their payment processing goes through Ireland, interestingly, and you can make a fair use claim for any DVD, just like you can make a fair use claim for recording a TV show on a VCR. But the fact remains, a lot of people are going to use this to steal.
Well, this goes into an interesting discussion that I heard the other day, and they were talking about how the next generation Xbox, they're considering, it's a rumor that you might not be able to play secondhand games.
Yeah. So
which is bizarre to me. I mean, and I was thinking, okay, fine,
yeah.
even if it's not secondhand.
That would be incredibly easy to do. And the way you do it is the way that Amazon does it with ebooks, is you don't give someone something physical. You give them a protectable file, in other words, we don't sell these things in stores.
I mean, the only other way I can see them doing it is that you need to log in every game, every CD or Blu-ray, whatever it is, is registered to that live
account. Even if there was a disc, you could tie it to your Windows Live ID or your Xbox gamer tag or whatever.
But again, what if you have two? What if you have two different Xboxes with two different live codes? What if you have, you go to your friend's house?
Yeah.
I mean, how are they going to do that?
Well, okay, we don't know how they're going to do it, so let's
yeah,
let's
exactly.
Not worry about that too much.
But I mean, it's kind of the same discussion.
I'm sorry.
It's kind of the same discussion that they're trying to defeat some sort of piracy or some sort of, how can you don't share this aspect of it?
Yeah, I would say even on today's Xbox 360, there are things that are lousy. So, for example, if you bought the game Battlefield 3 that just came out last fall, there was a code in the box so you could get into multiplayer. That code is tied to you. So now that game as a used item is less valuable than it would be if it was any other game, because the other games don't require a code to play online. So now let's say you go into a GameStop or something and you buy a used copy of Battlefield 3. Well, someone else already used the code, so what are you going to do? I believe, although it wasn't there when I looked last November or December, but my understanding is that the makers of that game, which I want to say is Electronic Arts Dice, I think, were going to offer a way for people who bought a used copy of the game to get online by buying a code for multiplayer, which maybe would cost $10 or $20.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see the beginnings of kind of a lousy DRM-esque protection scheme for what is obviously the key aspect of this game, the part you're going to play over and over and over again. Now, they're the only ones that I'm personally aware of that do that, but there must be others. And, that's sort of a hint at how they could do stuff like that. But I actually think if you're familiar with the online gaming service, which allows you to do very modern looking games over your internet connection to a very simple device, which they sell for almost nothing, a $99 device, I think it is, with a game controller, or through an iPad, a PC, a Mac, or whatever. That thing relies on a broadband internet connection, and everything is up in the cloud.
I mean, they're all the work is being done on their servers.
Yeah, so it's not far-fetched to imagine that Microsoft might use some hybrid system where the hardware itself is decent and obviously much more powerful than the current Xbox, but that they could combine it with this cloud-based stuff. Now, Microsoft probably doesn't want to screw over all the retail stores, so I mean, I could kind of imagine some kind of a screwy system, especially and even just for gifts. If you want to buy a video game for someone as a gift, where you buy what is basically a little box, and inside of it is a code. And you go home and you type that code into the Xbox, and then the game downloads to your machine, and maybe it's handled that way.
I believe GameStop has a specific store just for secondhand games.
Yeah,
and that was the first thing I thought. I'm like, it's a huge business, and they benefit from having it. I guess we could go into the Xbox stuff, right? Do you want to go into it?
Yep.
So the rumors are all these rumors started coming out. I don't know how much of them, how many of these rumors are actual hard facts. None of us know, so we're just going based on what's been put out there on the internet. One thing we know for sure, it's not going to be called the Xbox 720.
Yes.
I think that's single-handedly one of the dumbest names ever.
That says a lot about the writer of an article and how they feel about their audience.
Yeah.
You know, that you are too dumb to understand what I mean by the next Xbox. So I will call it the Xbox 720, even though I know it's not going to be called that because 720 is 360 times.
Why not just call it the 1080? Why not just call it,
by the way, why not just call it what Microsoft calls it? Xbox V Next. You know, it's not hard, people. You know, this is something I don't agree with or understand. I just don't get it.
You know where I saw it? I saw it on IGN recently, and I saw a post.
I see it everywhere.
But you know who that's catering to? That's not catering to. I don't think that's catering to any of our audience. I think that's catering to the 12 to 16-year-olds that are going to say, "Oh my God, the 720."
By the way, I should say this because I tend to be very critical of others that do things that are similar to what I do, and I want to say, I actually like IGN for whatever it's worth. You know, most of the video game publications and electronic publications are pretty lousy in the sense that they do cater to children and they write that way, and I find it cloying and painful to read. IGN's actually pretty good. I mean, that said, it's a busy site, and you know, it's obviously designed for attention deficit sort of people. But you know, when I go into a store and I'm looking at video games and I don't know about a game, I use the IGN mobile app to look at the reviews because I trust those guys. And actually, I have to say, I generally do agree with their reviews. So there you go. I just said I like something.
By the way, our chat room is having a lot of fun with the Xbox discussion. They've suggested some other names other than the 720. Yep. They have suggested the Xbox 9930, much like how BlackBerry does their numbers.
Nice.
The Xbox 1080, the Super Xbox, the Xbox X, Xboxy Box, Nextbox, Xbox Next, Zbox. I suggested Xbox 2000. Somebody suggested Xbox Millennium, Xbox Entertainment System, Xbox Metro.
I like Nextbox.
Nextbox,
that's worth.
Or how about Xbox 32X, just like Genesis?
Jeez, yeah, that worked out great.
Yeah, that worked out great. The Xbox 3DO.
It's the Xbox Blu-ray player for Xbox 360.
Or my favorite, the Thurrott Time Waster.
Yikes, there you go.
That's a good one.
Time waster. This is how I settle my thoughts.
Yeah, some people just sit back and they drink gin and whiskey.
I have bouts of epiphany when I play Modern Warfare sometimes. If you're ever playing in a game with me, by the way, online, and you see me, and you can see that it's me, and then suddenly the guy just stops moving and he just stands there, that's because I suddenly clicked with something and I turned to my keyboard and started writing. I have many games that I go like 2 and 32.
I don't want to play a game with you because I think our work relationship will end because I've become one of those annoying people to play with. Like I do when I watch a movie with my wife. I'm like, who's that? What does he do? I become like everybody's grandmother.
Right.
And why is he there? But what's his name? And I'll do that during the game. I'm like, why are we going in there? Who's this guy? How much does this guy weigh?
Right.
Like I become one of those people. So I can't play games at all anymore. That's why I stick to my my fun iPod Touch. That's as far as I'm getting.
That's not gaming.
Yeah, I push coins actually. I'm so embarrassed to tell the story, but I'll do it anyway because I don't care anymore.
What's the point?
I spent $20 on coins, on imaginary coins in a game called Coin Pusher, where you push coins.
Yikes.
Yeah.
You know, my kids did something like that, but of course they have an excuse there.
They have an excuse now. Yeah. It's very embarrassing. So it's not going to be called the 720. I'm kind of glad it's not. But we also found out that the next generation PlayStation, which I don't even know why they're even competing at this point, theirs is going to come out a year after. So Xbox will have the advantage here. The PlayStation 4, we're not going to see it till 2014 or 2015 even.
Well, we played that game last week about, pretend you're running the company. You got to remember, Sony has so many consumer electronics products across a variety of categories that I don't see any reason why they wouldn't make another PlayStation. They need that device.
But they need to do something. They need to do something totally different than what they've been doing because obviously they put out that big horsepower-driven super console that nobody wanted.
Well, millions of people wanted it. I mean, I think it's pretty clear at this point that they're going to come in third place. So obviously that wasn't the strategy.
No,
So
I mean, for
it wasn't the
considering
winning strategy.
no, considering how dominant they were.
Yeah.
I mean, they went to last place, which is a huge shocker to many people. But
well, but they also came out of nowhere to be number one with the PS2. So I mean, things go up and down. We'll see. This should give hope to Microsoft that they could even win the next time around. Who can say?
So we do know that they're going to be powered by an AMD chip.
The 360 or the
the
next Xbox,
the 720.
Yeah.
Yeah. We know that AMD is going to be powering the GPU is going to be an ATI GPU, which makes sense, I guess.
You don't have this in here, but one of the key things I think we know about the next Xbox is that the architect behind Windows NT is now working on the Xbox team on this console. And that suggests things. It doesn't prove anything, but it suggests perhaps that this guy, by the way, was an expert in such things as virtualization, 64-bit computing, and so forth, multi-core processing, all that kind of thing. I mean, maybe part of the deal is they need a backwards compatibility story. That's a big deal for Microsoft. It's something that they did okay with the 360. They supported all the key games from the original Xbox and kind of improved that over time. And maybe there'll be a similar backwards compatibility layer that will be virtualization based or something, or something like that. I mean, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. You know what I would love to see, and I suggested this for Nintendo on Friday, and I said, Nintendo really has something interesting because they have that catalog. They have that back catalog of unbelievable games that they put out 20 years ago.
Yep.
I would love to see them with the next generation console because they really have to do something to step it up at this point. Why not have all those games remastered into HD, quote-unquote, HD 2D versions of what they were, and sell them for maybe $9.99 or $6.99 or whatever, and you'll sell millions of them.
They didn't remaster them, but they did do something like that on the Wii, right? There is a store that is online, and you can download these things to the console, and they put a bunch of their key previous generation games, a couple of generations old actually, available for sale on there. And actually, to be fair, I think Sony does something similar.
Sony does do that
as well
too,
through the PlayStation. I don't pay as much attention to that stuff, but
it's kind of hard when you're looking at the PlayStation because the PlayStation's games are looking really dated. If I would rather play a Nintendo game that's 20 years old than to play a game from 15 years ago on the PlayStation.
I would actually say that the potential for those games is probably similar because maybe you grew up on Nintendo and that's what you were into, but some other people plus or minus a couple of years from you might have grown up on the PS2, and for them that is nostalgia. I would personally love to see a bunch of Amiga games ported to anything, whatever it was. I mean, one thing I did do, and I don't know, it's funny because I never played any of these games at all, but I was into the Intellivision when I was a kid. And still in my cellar have one of the most incredible Intellivision collections around of actual cartridges and hardware and so forth. And the guys who were responsible for that machine and those games released a package of basically everything they ever did under the title, In TV, whatever it was. And I owned that on the PC. I owned it on the Xbox. I think I've owned it on everything that they ever released it on. And it's just a nostalgia thing. I've never sat down with it and actually played any of these games for any amount of time. It's just a stupid thing that I did because, I grew up on that stuff, and it's, for whatever reason, it's meaningful, but I don't.
My first console was the Atari 2600. That's what I started off on. And my first game was E.T., one of the worst games ever made.
Yeah.
Did you play that?
Yeah.
Oh, it was unbearable. It was such a disappointment.
Well, a lot of those 2600 games at first were disappointments. Like the original Pac-Man was a disappointment. They eventually figured that stuff out, by the way. I think the way they did it was by putting extra memory in the cartridges or something. But Miss Pac-Man on the 2600 is actually pretty good. And obviously a lot of the later generation arcade ports to the 2600 were actually pretty decent, given what they had to work with.
I think we had a 7800 too.
Yeah, I've later years collected all this stuff. I have had a pretty decent 7800 collection, 5200, Never really collected the 2600 stuff, but I have a ColecoVision with the 2600 a box, the clip-on adapter, and also the one for the Intellivision.
The 7800 was a whopping 320 by 240 resolution.
I know, which is a postage stamp today, which is really funny. But those games look great. Like Xevious, I think, was the big one.
Yeah.
And Joust.
Well, I remember the controller. The controller in the 7800 was really nice compared to the other ones.
Yeah, the 5200 had a very complex and easy to break controller, right, with the number pad on it. But you could twist it, and people were always ripping off the joystick part of it. That stuff is fun. I mean, I and I would actually and have paid certainly for Atari collections over the years as well, for whatever that's worth. Of course, there are many of those. This stuff should all come to these next generation consoles electronically. I think that's the way to do it.
And I think a lot of them are doing it, and it is working. But I would love, I don't think they can just put it out there again and tell everybody to buy it. I think they have to do something different. And I think if they were to take the time and really remaster some of these games, you only do a couple of them. You'll do, I know they did it.
I would give anything to see the top 10 games on the Amiga, for example, which would still look fantastic today.
Let me see. Top 10 games on Amiga. Top 10
Well, my
games.
top 10 games would include such things as, the Shadow of the Beast games, Wings, which was absolutely fantastic. Almost anything from Cinemaware. There was a game called, actually, the Psygnosis guys, who I think were later bought by Sony and probably dispersed to the earth, but they made games that almost no one has ever heard of, like Leander, which was fantastic. Or
Speedball 2?
Yeah, I didn't play that one.
No.
I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. There was one. There was like a flying owl over a parallax background. Parallax backgrounds were big on the Amiga. A lot of UK type games that never really made their way stateside because the Amiga was just bigger in Europe. A lot of sideways scrollers with the background, the parallax scrolling background.
I'm trying to see who owns the rights now. Who owns the rights to the games?
Well, it depends on the game, obviously. Cinemaware is actually an ongoing concern, and those guys just ported probably their best ever game, Defender of the Crown, to the iPad and the iPhone. It's way more playable on an iPad, but the thing that's really interesting about that game is it is a pixel by pixel reproduction of the original Amiga game. I think it's running in an Amiga emulator on the iPad, which kind of shows you how far along things have gone. So those guys own those games. The problem is some of these companies don't really exist anymore, like the Shadow of the Beast games or Leander, or I'm going to come up with the name of the owl game. It's killing me. I can't think of it, but Epic. I don't remember. Something like that.
I just Googled owl game.
It's
Agony Main?
Owl. It's a single word. It could begin with an A.
Is it Agony?
Agony is the game. Yes, I think that's it. Agony. Let me look that up.
It's a creepy looking owl as the image.
It's a white owl flying. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Agony. Yep. Great game. Leander was my favorite. That's one no one's ever heard of. That's a sideways scroller. It's a kind of a guy with a sword, and that's a fantastic game. I love that game. And it's kind of just gone, right? It's a lot of these things are just gone.
Yeah, because it came out the time that it came out. I mean, looking 91, 92, it kind of fell through the
well,
the
plus
cracks.
it was on a minority video game platform, and
EA published it. EA has the rights to it.
EA does, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to see them make a new version of that and put it out on all the major. Of course, these, unfortunately, the world has obviously changed too. I mean, the problem with a game like Leander, even though it was beautiful for the day, is that sideways scrollers don't represent the state of the art anymore. It's like these 3D games.
Oh, but I love that. I love side scrollers.
No, I do too. But I even paused the other day. I was playing Call of Duty, and when you play some of the different game modes, there are you get shot and you die, and then you have to wait 10 or 12 seconds before you come back, and it will auto focus in on somebody who's on your team, and they're doing whatever they're doing. And there was a view of this guy who was camouflaged, and he was in the woods, and it was like almost stunning how photorealistic and beautiful that picture was. And I could only appreciate it, for 5 or 6 seconds, and then it finally went away. But
yeah.
I was looking at that and thinking, games have come such an amazing, way since the early days. It really, it's neat sometimes, to even think about it.
I'll buy, like, sometimes on the Xbox, I'll buy some of those, like, those online games that they have. like Castle
Yeah.
Crashers. Like I like Castle Crashers a lot, and I played that for a while. I just can't commit to a lot of these games. They take up way too much time.
Yeah,
I just can't.
I've devolved. I mean, I used to move from game to game to game, and the Call of Duty games, and it really started with the first one. Well, the first one on the Xbox 360, Call of Duty 2. They've gotten better and better each year, and I now look at these games like this is what I'm going to be playing for the next year. You know, there'll be diversions. You know, go in and play a game like the Gears of War games. Like I'll go and play that. You know, Halo will come out. I'll go play that. But I always come back. You know, I know that this game is going to be the next year as far as gaming goes, because I don't know if it's just a limitation that I have. Like I can't think beyond this anymore or whatever. But it's like I'm done. You know, like this is enough.
I want to continue the discussion about the next generation Xbox and what we hope to see and what we expect. But I do want to talk about our sponsor, which is Return, and that's Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Now, Hover's been a sponsor of the network for some time now. And I have to say, if you are looking to purchase a domain and you don't want to deal with the nonsense from a lot of those other guys, one comes to mind. They killed some elephants, Paul. I think there was an issue with elephants. I don't want to name names. I don't want to name names. They also, the same company kind of was supporting SOPA, and they lost thousands of customers because of this. But I could almost guarantee you, Hover will never do anything like that. It's a quick, easy way to buy a domain name. If you go to gfq.hover.com, you can get 10% off your entire purchase. Their goal is to make it super easy for you. One example is no hold time. So if you call them during business hours, there will be no hold time for you. So you'll get someone immediately on the phone. They told me a funny story once about how, and they're extremely helpful. I've called them a couple times, and they're super, super helpful. I was speaking to one of the guys from there, and he was telling me how somebody that was working there got a phone call from an older lady, and she was calling about her vacuum, and because she thought it was Hoover she was calling. So she called them and asked them, you know, I have this vacuum. I need to get this part. They actually spent the time and they helped her and then proceeded to tell her, listen, by the way, this is not Hoover. Here's a number for Hoover. Let me connect you to them.
Nice.
So that's the type of company Hover is. If you go to gfq.hover.com, you get 10% off your entire purchase at Hover, or you could use promo code GFQ upon checkout. Another thing that they do is you could transfer a domain. If you're with those other guys and you're not happy with what they're doing, they make it extremely easy for you to transfer it. You could even call them. They'll do it for free, the process of it. And I believe it's $10 for the year. They still honor your previous years because it's through ICANN, of course. But it's $10 plus the 10% off, so $9 for a domain for that year, which is great. Hover.com, gfq.hover.com to get 10% off your entire purchase. Back to you, Paul.
But I was just enjoying Leander's screenshots online.
I haven't done a Hover ad in a while. That's the first one we've done in quite a few months.
It's like riding a bike.
Yeah, you know what? It's a little weird. They didn't send me the copy yet, so I had to go based on what I had done in the previous years. They're funny. When I met them the first time, one of the guys is actually from Plainview, Long Island, and he's like, "Hey, wait a minute, guys from Queens. You're from right around where I'm from," and we bonded, and that's why they're with me. No, they're great guys, and really enjoy the service. By the way, I was telling Paul, I've transferred over 200 domains to Hover.
You might have a domain problem.
I do. I'm the proud owner of paulthurrott.co.
Right. I was meaning to look that up.
That one day I will blackmail you with.
Right.
I'll just spread lies. Like you know what I'll do? I'll have a picture of you and I'll take your head off and I'll Photoshop an Apple logo.
Yeah, there you go.
And
my God. You know, I gotta publish this photo. I spent a lot of the past couple weeks cleaning my office and rearranging and going through everything. And I have all these old data cartridges and hard drives and zip disks, and it's all this stuff, all these really old archives. And one of the pictures I found in a backup zip disk from 1996 was a photo that a friend of mine took while I was helping him move his office. And it's me grasping a Mac, and I'm carrying it for him. And he took a picture of me with the Mac, and he called it "Paul Embraces the Mac."
Oh, that's hysterical.
So I was at the butt of Apple jokes as long ago as 1996.
That's But you've had a Mac for a long time.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I've had many Macs, and consistently I've had a Mac or 2 or 3 here since like 2000 or 2001. I don't remember.
So I do want to go back to the Xbox. Let's go down a list of some of the rumors that we've heard, some of the stuff that will not be happening, that we don't expect that's going to be happening, and some of the stuff that we hope to see in it. The rumors are that they're gonna put a Blu-ray player in there, or have Blu-ray support.
I don't know what to say about that one. I think that one just doesn't seem right to me.
Me either.
I would be more likely to believe that the next generation Xbox will not have any optical media at all. Than that. You know? And actually, if you think about it, given the state of solid state storage, if you will, going back to a system that is essentially a cartridge, right? But is in fact, you know, some amount of space, might make more sense than a disc. And beyond that, I actually think they're going to do a download type thing.
Well, how big are some of the big files? Like some of the big games? Like how big do they go?
Well,
I know some of them are multiple discs.
Right, and that's the problem on the 360. So, and it's something that the PlayStation doesn't have a problem with because those discs are humongous, comparatively speaking. You know, a dual layer DVD, which I think is actually they did something screwy, I guess, with the Xbox. So a standard DVD can go up to what is it, like 8 point something gigabytes, but they changed the file system, so newer discs can probably go somewhere up to say let's 10 or 11 gigabytes, something like that. Blu-rays are much bigger. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was in the 40 to 50 range. And
I mean, we can theoretically, and it's funny, right? We went from cartridge to CD, and then we could potentially, you're right, we could go back to cartridge with an SD card.
Yeah,
you know, that could do it. But they're gonna have to have some sort of media. I don't know. They might stick to optical, Paul. You know why? Because they might see it as a media device rather than just a gaming console. So they might say...
Oh, no, they will, definitely.
And they might say, you know what? The PlayStation 3 was very successful as a Blu-ray player. We might want to capitalize on that.
I don't see it happening. That the future of that media, movies, TV shows, is not disc. It's not a physical media. And if this thing is truly forward-leaning like it should be, it should just skip that altogether. You know, just like Apple did with the Apple TV, you know.
What do you do? What do you do with people that really don't care about the downloadable content, or they don't have the bandwidth?
Well, that's not their audience. I mean, by definition, you're selling a next generation living room home entertainment box. You know.
Do you think they've totally abandoned local use and everything? They are going to concentrate specifically on.
Yeah, I mean, it will have, obviously, you'll be able to plug in a memory card that has a movie on it or something, or your photo slideshow, whatever it is. You'll be able to access media on your home network like you can now. You'll be able to access online services, which I think is really the future of this stuff.
And don't get me wrong, I am not a fan of optical. I think optical is nearly obsolete at this point. I give it one more year, and we're going to see the total abandonment of optical storage and optical drives on these computers.
Well, it's
really
true that a Blu-ray movie of whatever, Avatar, whatever it is better looking by and large than even a 1080p stream of whatever that movie is. It's close though, you know, and I think for most people, that's just not. Most people are not, you know, video files. They're just not. That's a tiny audience. They feel very strongly about it. But they don't represent the norm. So that's just my feeling. I'm not saying I don't have any information about this one way or the other. I think about a video game / home entertainment system that's going to come out a year from this coming Christmas. Mm-hmm. Optical media is not. That's like saying it's going to have a floppy drive.
No, I hope it doesn't, because it might be a backwards way of doing things, but. I'm trying to think what market, what percentage of the market kind of wants it to have optical storage and optical media.
I don't think that matters. I mean, there are bigger concerns. I mean, obviously you need something that's not going to put the retail stores out of business. So there's going to be a box, you know, whether that thing has actual media in it in the form of an SD card or a memory card or whatever, or an optical disc, almost doesn't matter. It could have a code, like I said. Right now, if you buy most Xbox 360 games, you can hand that game to a friend. He can bring it over to his house. He can put it into his console, play it, get achievements, blah, 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 and then give it back. Obviously, the future of this stuff is not allowing that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not piracy. You're just letting someone borrow it, If this thing was tied to your gamer tag, you could never, or more difficultly, if you will, give that away to someone else, or let them use it or whatever. I mean, that by tying it to you, Microsoft is in some ways helping the industry because it makes it harder for people to do that loaning type thing and the the used business and so forth. So I think this is just the natural progression for this stuff.
I mean, I could see them doing secondhand games only at partnered, retail providers.
Yeah, you may have to.
Because then they don't want to piss off their retail partners. They really don't.
Well, that's right, and that's the consideration. I think whatever they do is going to be based on all these things, all these different players. The partners also include the companies that make the games. They don't want their games bopping around in used hell for the next 5 years because they don't ever see any more money on that. So what if there was a system where you could detach a game from your account and someone else could get it, but then that company got another $10 or something, and it kind of made that a little bit easier on them. I mean, there are all kinds of things. I think that stuff, the electronic / DRM type thing, is more likely than a disc. But we'll see.
Another thing that people are saying is that it's going to have the Kinect 2, which is going to be a much smarter, higher quality Kinect. Which, obviously, I mean, it's evolutionary, right? Every year we're getting a different device, and we're seeing it on computers now. We're going to have it, you're going to be able to get it on your desktop computer, PC. You're also, what they're predicting for the next one is that some of these laptops, Windows 8 laptops, are going to have Kinect built in. That was another prediction.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're going to see Kinect as a standard, I mean, I assume in the next year or two. For everything that they're doing,
I guess. I mean, I just remind people that back in 2002, I guess it was, Microsoft was promoting this notion of a tablet PC, and that the big deal behind the tablet PC was that handwriting would be a first-class data type in Windows, just like a text file or a Word doc, and that you wouldn't have to convert this thing to some other format to be understood or to search it or whatever. It would just be its own thing. That technology still exists today, but nobody uses it, relatively speaking. So they can try to make Kinect a standard, and they can say that it is one of the many ways you'll be able to control your computer or your Xbox console and so forth. But it kind of remains to be seen whether that will take off. Clearly, it's been very successful. I think we talked about this before. If you think about the numbers, it's pretty likely that there is one Kinect out there for almost every 2 Xbox actual users of Xbox 360. That's incredible. So clearly this thing has seen great success, at least on the Xbox 360.
And we haven't seen the full potential of it. I mean, that's the amazing part.
And the current version's terrible. So yes, it's only going to get better.
What do you want to see in it? I mean, you're on the Xbox almost every day. What is something that you could benefit from it? People are saying
I will never benefit from it. I think that honestly, the big deal with the Kinect is the voice, not the motion stuff. Me personally, motion is, I don't care about that.
No, I'm talking about the Xbox itself.
Oh, the Xbox itself.
Like right now, I wouldn't buy a Kinect because I have no reason to have it. I'm not that big of a gamer, and I really don't want to move around.
A lot of the things I talked about earlier with regards to what I'd like to see as a lack of optical disc is sort of when I look at this thing and I think, okay, what are the problems with it? It's still too loud. It's not incredibly portable. The discs stink. You move this thing while the disc is in there, you scratch it, it's worthless. To me, that's just stupid.
I'm on a first gen, Paul. The thing is like a 747 in my bedroom.
Right. So hopefully they get all that stuff right. I think making a device that looks at home in the living room and that works well and is silent, we can obviously expect it to have all the next generation graphics and sound and all that stuff. I think this is a given, but I think the end of optical media is an important one. I think that close Integration with the cloud stuff is huge. It needs to be like the experience today when you're on your iPhone or your iPad or whatever phone you may have, and you do that. Remember we're talking about how easy it is to buy something. It needs to be that easy on the Xbox as well. It needs to be that natural where you will find yourself in the living room just browsing around their marketplace. Maybe I'll watch a movie tonight. Maybe I'll play a game that I don't even own yet, but I could rent it instead of buying it. I could just play it for 2 hours, which, by the way, is also an OnLive business model.
Oh, really? On OnLive, you could rent
you can
a game?
essentially rent a game. You pay for it for some amount of time.
That's interesting.
Yeah. A lot of good ideas there. By the way.
No, I think OnLive is actually doing something very unique, but I think the thing that plagues
if some other company had come up with this, if Microsoft was the one doing OnLive or Apple, this would be the biggest thing in the world.
I remember when the story came out that this service was going to come out. I think it was like 2 years ago at E3.
Yep.
People are thinking it was going to be vaporware.
Yep. It sounded incredibly fake.
Do you remember the Phantom console? Do you remember that?
No.
Years ago. So let's say during, I guess, when the Xbox came out, there was this console called the Phantom that was supposed to come out and allow you to play games both on the PC and on the console. It was totally, it wasn't real. It was not vaporware. What do they call? Yeah, I think it's called vaporware.
Just fake.
It was just fake. Yeah, they had a bunch of demos and it never happened. And when this service came out, they were saying the same thing. The only thing that this had going for itself was the fact that they had E3 as a not E3. I'm sorry. Why can't I think? Jesus, the one that makes all the games. The publisher.
Mean, Electronic Arts.
Electronic Arts, yeah. EA behind it, and that's what kind of made it legitimate. But if they didn't have EA behind it, people would have said it's another one of those fake consoles. But if you think about what it's doing, you don't need hardware. You need nothing. All you need is a solid internet connection, and it does everything for you.
Right.
Again, I've heard from many people that have tried it. It doesn't work that great if your internet is not that great. So it's a very small percentage of people that could really use this.
Yeah. I've used it. It's fine. I mean, for me, it works fine. I actually can't explain why I'm not more excited about it. I mean, I've talked about it a lot here today, but they have some good ideas, and they're very aggressive about marketing. They send a lot of emails. They always have different deals and so forth. It's all very smart. It's kind of unclear why it isn't a bigger deal. But I'm telling you, if Nintendo, Microsoft, and or Sony did this exact thing, but with their consoles, it would be huge, huge. And I would really look to what they're doing, and this notion of the combination of the cloud stuff with an actual decent piece of hardware. And by the way, just speaking off the top of my head, I mentioned that the architect from NT, whose name is Dave Cutler, is working on this team. The last thing that David Cutler worked on before he came here was Windows Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud-based operating system, cloud-based server operating system. Kind of leads some credence to the notion that maybe the Xbox 360 would also have this kind of OnLive type experience on the back end where it's a lot of cloud-based stuff. And this is also something that guy has a lot of experience with. And he brought one of his key coworkers over from Azure to work with him on the 360. So everything I've just said about OnLive, I think that maybe is where people can spend some time examining what could be taken from there to be used by the other console makers.
Well, they're even doing that remote desktop stuff, which is really interesting.
Yep.
Have you tried it? I tried it on my.
Yeah, it works great.
It works really good. Yeah.
It's awesome because I do a lot of remote desktop stuff. I don't usually do it on a phone or an iPad or whatever, but typically you do it to your own machine, right? What's interesting about the OnLive desktop product, which is like this, it's an iPad app that lets you hit a Windows remote desktop. You don't have to have a Windows remote PC sitting somewhere. They provide it for you. They actually bought a bunch of Windows licenses. What you're hitting is a virtual environment that's sitting up on a server somewhere. You are logging into your account, which you already have it OnLive if you have one of the gaming accounts like I do. They give you your own desktop. It includes storage, so you have your own files. It has a copy of Microsoft Office 2010. So I think it's just the three major apps: Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. Create documents, edit documents, save them, log off, log on again. It all comes back. It's like a virtual environment.
But this obviously is shooting to be something much larger, which I don't know why they're limited to those three applications. I wonder if that's
I don't either, but this is a start. I mean, this is like a proof of concept. But the thing that's interesting is when you consider the notion of delivering 3D games from the cloud, that's incredible. delivering the Windows desktop from the cloud, that's a joke. It's really easy to do. I mean, this must be uh, like an afterthought for these guys, but it turn turn out to be a more lucrative market. It certainly makes the notion of moving to an iPad, let's say, a little bit easier. And some of those people who, for whatever reason, want some kind of Windows thing going on, but don't necessarily need their own Windows PC. I mean, that's a neat idea. And as the iPad, of course, improves in capability, and you have maybe a better integration with a keyboard or a real pointing device possibility as well. That gets very, very interesting.
One thing that annoyed me was that when you're typing, you're not using the keyboard on the iPad.
Yeah,
you're using
the Microsoft one.
The Microsoft one, and it's really different.
But it's amazing how even that. I mean, if you're not used to the Windows virtual keyboard, that's it. That's the one that Microsoft gives you on a touch machine. So it's the real thing. I mean, they even they included the I forget what the exact name is, but it's like the Microsoft Touch Pack, which is basically a bunch of games essentially that you can kind of twiddle around with your fingers and stuff, because that stuff all communicates through the iPad, and it works really well.
I was looking into this because I think if they were to do a service where it's a remote computer and it's a full access computer, I mean, you use it for everything, it might really be something worth getting. I mean, I think a lot of people might be interested in that, but I'm curious to know if right now, the reason why they've only limited to 3 applications is a licensing issue.
Well, they bought the license for those apps. I mean, I'm sure part of it is just a simple.
You don't think it's possibly a deal saying, okay, you're going to be you could potentially use the licenses, but you have to limit it just to this.
No, they can do whatever they want.
They can do whatever they want.
Okay. What they're doing is legal. All they have to do is ensure that there aren't too many users at the same time using those licenses, because you have to pay for how many are in use at any given time. So you have to have those, paid for. So
would Microsoft have any way of knowing how many they're using at the same time? No, right?
No, they would not.
That's interesting. I mean, it just shows you where it's headed.
Yeah. Yep.
What kind of integration do you think we're going to see between the Xbox and the potential Windows 8 tablets?
I think there's going to be a lot of integration there. I mean, obviously, there's going to be the user experience similarities, right? They both have that Metro style UI. But I also think, as part of this next generation console, regardless of whether it's technically based on Windows 8 in any way, which I don't actually see happening, that it needs to take on the Windows 8 capabilities that make sense, right? So today there's this really hokey way of connecting to your Windows network and to the machines on there, and you can access your content and so forth. But Windows 7, for example, and Windows 8 has this as well, has a simplified networking scheme called home groups. And the Xbox should work on a home group. You should be able to do things like intelligently understand what the capabilities of that device are out there, and do stuff like the Apple users do today. For example, be able to have a movie on your your Windows 8 tablet and blast it to the console. Windows actually has this capability. It's just that they don't integrate it with the Xbox today, and Apple has done a great job of integrating it across all their products. And so people sort of assume that Apple invented it or something. They call it AirPlay, but these capabilities, even though they're implemented differently in Windows, have existed since Windows 7 launched. There's no reason that can't go to the, it should be, these things should be across all of those devices, the Windows 8 phones, the Windows Phone 8 phones, I guess we would call it, or the Windows 8 devices of any kind, and the Xbox console. Absolutely.
I'm looking at a demo of the Wii U right now, and they do this integration between the actual tablet controller and the TV, like the actual console, and I think Microsoft could really see what they're kind of doing with that and benefit if Windows 8 tablets are a big hit.
Yeah.
Which they will be. I mean, they obviously will be selling, but it's kind of the same thing, right? You have this tablet and you could use it to potentially play your games on it.
Yeah. By the way, that would be another integration point, right? There was a real small hint of this when the Windows Phone first came out, that there could be this possibility of apps running on the phone that would in some way integrate with something you were doing on the console. Never really came to life in any meaningful way. there was kind of they did some crossover type things. Halo Waypoint is obviously not a game, but there was a Crackdown app that was kind of interesting. Um, there's absolutely integration that can occur across there. There could be the notion that we have on ebooks today, where you're, in this case, you would be playing a game perhaps on the console, and then it's time to go. And so you pause it and turn off the console, and then you pick it up on your phone or your tablet and you keep playing, depending on the game type. Obviously that wouldn't work well for everything, but where it makes sense, how cool would it be for that kind of thing to work across devices? Or even if you had, your tablet was like an auxiliary display for the game you were playing, and you could have it kind of sitting there next to you as you were going. You could have like updated stats and everything. I mean, there's all kinds of neat things you could do. This is a basic capability, but one of the things that I do when I'm playing Call of Duty, for example, is they have this notion of challenges. And so and there are thousands of them. It's hard to keep track of them. In fact, it's ponderous in the game because while you're playing the game, you can't go look at what the challenges are that you have to do. Like, I might be able to go in and say, okay, with this particular weapon using this particular attachment, I only have 2 more kills and I'll get like 10,000 points. But if I use this other thing, I need to get like 15 kills. So it's actually better to go with this one. When you're in the game, you can't do it. So you have to wait till the game ends, and then you back out, you go look at the barracks, and you go look at the challenge. You're like, oh yeah, okay, I got it. But if you had that stuff on a screen, whether it was your phone or a tablet or whatever, I mean, that would be useful. I realize this is a kind of a special use case, but you can see how that might be applied to all kinds of different things.
It's very interesting, and they have the potential of really making something that I'm really gonna like. But if they do go lighter, right? I mean, that's something that we are considering. They're gonna go lighter and they're gonna go more cloud based. What does that do to the pricing?
Well,
I mean, the pricing will.
That's like saying, I'm buying a Prius instead of a big hulking Crown Victoria, so that thing should cost less because it's smaller. It's not really how it works. I mean, that thing still has some kind of inherent value. For example, when you buy an Amazon Kindle, some of them, it comes with this 3G capability. You pay for it once up front, and then you have this unlimited 3G for downloading books, essentially, for the rest of your life. The Xbox, by virtue of the fact that you bought it, you're going to have some capability to access their cloud services and perhaps do infinite downloading from their services or something. So there's still an inherent value to the thing. I mean, they'll charge what they want.
What's the price right now for the entry level, I guess?
It's got to be, well, actually I shouldn't say it.
$199?
I was actually thinking $299, but you're probably right.
Yeah, the 4 gig.
The 4 gig with no Kinect is $199.
Is $199? Okay. So, but
is that? Oh no, I'm asking. Yeah, so it's $199. Yep.
So, but most of the time people are buying the $299 model.
Yeah, so for $299 you can get one with a hard drive, or you can get the 4 gig version with the Kinect. That's basically, I think, how this works out.
What,
I would say in this day and age you want the hard drive.
If they go cloud based and they offer you, for $50 more, you could buy cloud storage and you could constantly upgrade it as you use it. Yeah. I mean, they could make a device that's, 4 gigs and you buy the rest on the cloud. You could buy 20, let's say 10 gigs, you could spend $40 on. If you need 25 gigs, you spend another.
So that assumes that they're going to stream from the cloud, which I actually don't think they're going to do solely. Okay. I still think that you're going to need to have some kind of massive storage, and that a better model is to download the games, hopefully as you play, right? So you don't have to wait for it. But you want that thing locally, so the second time it just starts right up, There are, there's some weird things like today you can do something like subscribe to, what's it called? The Call of Duty Elite service, right? I think it's $50 for the year. You get downloadable content every month. But what's not built into that is the notion that this thing will just appear on your console. You have to turn it on. There's a little thing in the game that says, oh, there's content available. And then you go and you manually download it, and you kind of sit there while it's doing it. It won't download in the background typically, and you have to kind of wait for it to happen. So, I mean, a more sophisticated system would be something where this thing would come on in the middle of the night, check for downloads, get them. And when you came in the morning, if you had something new and you knew it was coming that Tuesday or whatever, it would just be there. And that should be part of it. But this all requires on-device storage, and I think that's going to have to be.
And it also requires bandwidth. I mean, who knows? I mean, we're hoping that this is the direction that they take, but they might just release another big bulky Xbox with the same features. You know, it's a possibility that they might not give us this lightweight device that we are looking forward to and we expect. I think this is the first year when you're talking about these consoles where the story isn't the graphics. You know, every year when these consoles come out, you think, okay, the graphics are going to be higher. The graphics are going to be better. What kind of graphics is it going to have? But that's not really the discussion this time around.
Yeah, well, I guess...
because we know that the potential of these devices is phenomenal.
Yeah, but there's a natural limit to HD TV right now. So most, 1080p is going to be the baseline, I think would be the acceptable minimum, or whatever. It will probably down res, for people that don't have that. But the question is whether you go above that and hope that some future HD spec kind of takes off, or maybe the graphics card really has that headroom where it could happen. If it does, I would imagine, Sony being Sony, they'll be the guys that go with some kind of really expensive 3D that doesn't require glasses, that only works on Sony TVs or something. You could kind of see that kind of a replay of how things broke out with the current generation of consoles.
Yeah. Good stuff, Paul, but we do have to wrap it up. Now we
never got to Rubinstein.
Oh, you want to get to it?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I'll just throw this out, though.
This
is a quick sentence. I will say, people wonder how Apple is going to do.
Oh, my God. And I just saw you right. Really glad you added this one. Have a story.
Yeah. Well, and what you need to do is just watch that hyperlink. This is from 3 years ago now, but when just to step back. Jon Rubinstein worked at Apple previous to Palm, and actually he just left HP this.
Well, he was one of the people behind Next also, right?
I'm not. This is probably true. I don't remember, so I don't want to say. But he was directly responsible for the iPod. That was his big thing, and he really disappointed Steve Jobs by leaving Apple to go work at Palm, and on WebOS. And so, the video I linked to in the show notes is a video, and you can look it up on YouTube. But what you have to look for is Palm Pre Keynote CES 2009, Jon Rubinstein or whatever. It is an amazing look at a guy clearly influenced by Apple. What it is it's an Apple keynote, but without Steve Jobs. And it falls amazingly flat. He doesn't have the dynamic speaking ability of Steve Jobs. He's just not that interesting. The product he's showing is wonderful, especially when you consider, by the way, that this is now 3 years old. They clearly had all the right ideas. The problem was they presented it just like Apple presents everything.
Yeah.
And this is the problem that Apple could face because we're all kind of giving Tim Cook a pass these days. And I think we all sort of expect that he will have more of a team approach, that different people from Apple will come out and present their parts of things. Eddie Q will come out to do his stuff. Scott Forstall will come out to do his stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So those guys are plus or minus on the scale, but none of them are Steve Jobs. And unfortunately, this Jon Rubinstein thing, it's like a cautionary tale. It can show you that when you try to be Apple, Steve Jobs Apple, but you're not Steve Jobs, it doesn't always work.
I actually remember watching this happen.
Okay. It's stilted, right?
Yeah, I remember thinking it was very Apple-ish.
Oh, it's because that's the world he came from. He just copied it. He took it right from his former employer. I could see why Steve Jobs would be very upset about this. But it's interesting because it just doesn't work, When it's not Steve Jobs, it doesn't work.
Well, I think that's why Apple's been playing it safe. I think Tim Cook that's why he's playing it safe, where he is not the face of these keynotes.
Yeah, but I think they need to take it a step further because, unfortunately, every time they do a keynote that is reminiscent of the keynotes that Steve Jobs did, all it's going to do is remind people of Steve Jobs and how much better it was when he did it. And I think what they really need to do is kind of step back and perhaps come up with a different presentation style that isn't the same. Those things were very much a Steve Jobs production. He kind of set the tenor and the style, and obviously honed it over many years. And anyway, I would just say watch this Jon Rubinstein thing. Remember how awesome what he's showing is, and sort of pay attention to
I remember when this came out, when the pre came out. This is the phone itself, the OS was far more superior than Android was. I mean,
it's not even comparable.
It wasn't even comparable. I remember when I said, "Wow, it's over for Android," because I think Android at that point in 2009 they had put out that G1.
But what we didn't know was
they had no money left.
They had zero money.
Yeah.
No carrier support at all. I think they launched this thing just on Sprint, if I'm not mistaken, which is like kiss of death right there.
You know, I feel really sad when I think about Palm, and I don't know why. I
do too.
I have this weird bond. Like I know yours is, I guess, like the Amiga. Like you really like when I think of Paul. Like I feel like you feel sad for the Amiga.
I do. It should have won, and I feel the same way about Palm. You'll watch this and you'll be like, oh my god, I can't believe they had this 3 years ago.
You know what's funny? I remember when this came out, and I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be covering tech for a living because I'm really wrong with this stuff. Like when the iPhone was announced, and I've said it a couple times on the show, and I know we have a lot of new people coming in, and they don't know the story. I remember when that announcement happened. I wasn't involved in this business at all. I was actually on a retail side at a retail store, and I was talking to a friend. I was in the city when that announcement happened, and I think I was in the Apple store. I went there, and I said, "Wow, this is so stupid. Who would want to buy this? You could have a Palm Trio." And I honestly thought, I'm like, because I didn't know what it was going to have, and the App Store wasn't really developed at that point, and I was thinking, I'm like, well, Palm is so much better than what anybody else is doing right now. I was a big Palm fan, and I mean, obviously I was dead wrong, and I don't think anybody expected.
I've owned so many Palm devices, I completely get it, but no one understood. The iPhone launched, and I don't think we all understood how much the world was changing. It just happened,
Yeah.
But seriously, this Palm in this keynote, they introduced things that the 99.99% of the world that doesn't know anything about WebOS completely forgot about. For example, touch-based charging. They had a thing called, I think it was called Touchstone. Yeah. It was like a hockey puck looking thing that you would put the phone on top of, and it would just do inductive charging or capacitive charging or whatever it's called.
But also the hardware was not that great on this device either.
It was a little slow.
Yeah.
It was just a processor. I mean, actually, the actual hardware, like the form factor, was beautiful.
No, the form factor, yeah. I mean, visually, aesthetically, it was really nice, but the processor was slow.
Really high quality. Even like the plug that you put into the wall, they attach the USB cable to, beautiful, like nice connectors, nice big cylindrical pieces. This really high quality. All of the stuff that they did was just quality, like really high quality.
Yeah, and look where it is now.
Just watch this video; it's incredible. It's so many conflicting emotions, especially if you know anything. If you've ever seen a Steve Jobs video.
I mean, if this was successful,
this should have changed the world as much as the iPhone.
Yeah, and we'll leave it off at that. We'll leave the show at that. If this was successful and if this worked, I think it would be a different story, and I don't think Android would have the momentum that it does now.
It's the Amiga of the moment.
Yeah, it could have potentially been a number 2 phone. Android could have been on a lot of other phones, and I don't know if there would have been a place for Windows Phone.
Maybe Amazon could have licensed this and used it on their devices.
Yeah.
I mean, it's boggles the mind how awesome this could have been.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. Thank you, Paul. You go to Paul's website, winsupersite.com. Let's see what your latest blog is, which I do every week. Let's click on Paul's face.
Office 365 and small business server integration.
Yes. I like IE6 and the dark side of success.
Yes.
I want to read that one.
Okay.
I had an employee that refused to upgrade from IE6.
That's a fantastic browser if you're living in the past.
Yeah, they refused. To upgrade.
I actually meant to go back and look if I had ever written anything complimentary about IE6. Is it possible that in 2001 I actually thought that this was somehow the state of the art? And I doubt it, but God, that's a scary possibility.
Yeah.
I think I was a Firefox user back then.
I think it's 2000 what? 2001?
Was Firefox a thing?
Yeah,
it was like Phoenix back then or something.
No, Firefox.
I used Firefox before it was Firefox.
Mozilla.
No. I mean, it was just a project. It was like a side project of Mozilla. It was like Phoenix was the name for a while. They went through a bunch of different names before they settled on Firefox.
Excellent, Paul. You can check out Paul every Thursday on the Twit Network for Windows Weekly with Mary Jo Foley. Another great show. Also, Paul has an app, an iPhone app.
Oh, that's right.
Paul has an iPhone app in the iPhone App Store. App Store Marketplace. I don't know. Product placement. App Store. There you go. I keep forgetting. Man.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. In the App Store, it's getting confusing. Just put in Thurrott if you're searching, and boom, it'll be a picture of Paul's drinking coffee, and that's his app. And we're on there too. What the Tech is on the app, so you can listen on the go. Thank you, Paul, and thanks to our advertiser, Hover, hover.com, gfq.hover.com. They get 10% off, and we'll see you all next week on What the Tech. Good night, everybody.